Hello, welcome to Tattva. I'm Snehal, I'm a journalist, and we're about to lead this critical writing session to help you turn your ideas and opinions into logical, persuasive writing. No participation required, so we'll be doing some writing, so you might want a pen and paper, but you can also just sit back and listen with a cup of tea or coffee or go about your daily routine. I'll just tell you a bit about Tattva to start off. So we're a writers network. We're based in the UK. We do lots of different things. We hold workshops, videos like this. We write together, we publish writing. We hold an authorship program for trainee writers every year. We all have different day jobs. Some of us are academics, researchers, teachers, doctors, dentists, consultants, all sorts. But ultimately, what brings us together is that we want to share the stories of Indian culture, give a voice and a platform for the people in our communities. And that's really what this series is about too, helping people find their voices, express their ideas and opinions. Normally, when we talk about opinion pieces, we think about the middle pages or the weekend edition of a newspaper, written by a professional journalist or writer or something. But actually, we find debates and discussions across our everyday lives. So at work, how to fix a problem or how to handle a client or something. At home, how to manage the house or how to raise the kids. On social media, we can be debating the news, big moral questions, all sorts. And our world today is just full of so many different opinions and arguments and noise, really. We're communicating more than ever before, I think, and there are so many different platforms out there. But all of that doesn't mean that every single person's voice, every perspective is actually heard. And one of the things I found through my work in Tattva is that there are so many people in our community who just aren't heard, people who have stories and experiences and knowledge, who might actually have something to say, but either they don't speak up or we don't listen. So this series is for you. If you're someone who wants to express themselves more clearly, maybe you're a student or you're a professional and you fire off emails every day, if you have a seat at the table or you're always finding yourself in debates and discussions. But also it's for you if you are someone who doesn't normally speak up, who doesn't have the confidence or the tools to make yourself heard, if you think that you're not smart enough or important enough for people to listen to you. So in this series, we're going to learn the tools to writing critically and restructuring our opinions and thoughts and ideas into productive, logical arguments that people can understand and be persuaded by. So we'll be producing a few shorter articles, a few shorter bits of writing, and something longer. So we'll give you the tools to produce something longer too. And for this first episode, we'll keep things quite straightforward, quite pared down. So there'll be lots of free writing opportunities. We will actually produce a short opinion article within this hour, which I think is quite great. And that's something that you can just keep, share, take with you. There's just a few things that we all need to agree on before we start. So we're going to be sharing lots of different ideas and opinions today. So this is going to be a safe space. We'll all respect each other. We won't judge each other based on someone's ideas or thoughts or contributions. Whatever someone writes or comments in these videos, it doesn't mean that that's what they really think. And so we won't judge them based on that. And over this series, I think it's really important to make this clear. There aren't any right or wrong opinions. There are stronger and weaker arguments, but that strength is based not on what you say, but why you say it. And we're going to be learning how to make our arguments stronger. Okay, so our first activity. So sometimes when we think or say something, it's an expression of a feeling or an emotion or a reaction. It isn't always productive. But to say or write something that can actually make a difference, we really need to put together an argument that tells people what to do. So the first step is to restructure our thoughts into should statements. So I'm going to give you some thoughts and opinions that some people might have. And I'd like you to rephrase them as actions that someone should do. So you'll write down someone should do an action. And that someone can be a person, a group of people, the whole world, a company, the government, anything really that has agency, that can make a decision, make an action. I'll give you an example. It's better to take the stairs than the lift. So that's my thought, that's my sentence. I'm going to turn that into a should statement. So I can say, people should take the stairs instead of the lift. So I'm going to give you a few thoughts and feelings that someone might have. You don't have to agree with them. So for now, just put aside your own opinions and try to rephrase these sentences. Write down those should statements, or you can post them in the comment section. So your first sentence: it's easier to learn a new language when you're young. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to turn that into a should statement. Okay, and next, fresh vegetables are better for your health, but they're so expensive. Okay, your third sentence, so again, you're turning this into a should statement. Someone should do something. Tech companies sell our data to make money, and it isn't right. Okay, and number 4, your fourth sentence. Our system for submitting tax returns is too complicated. Okay, and 5th, weeds are good for the environment. Okay, great. So you might have noticed for some of these thoughts, there are a few different should statements that you could make, a few different people or groups, and a few different actions that they could take. So that's great, because now we have a few different options for what people could do to make a difference, to resolve a problem. So for the next few thoughts that I'll give you, try and come up with at least 2 different should statements, 2 different people or groups of people, and 2 different actions. So for example, I started with, it's better to take the stairs instead of the lift, and I turned that into a should statement. People should try to take the stairs instead of the lift. But I could also have another should statement. The managers of my office should open up the stairwell so people can take the stairs instead of the lift. So the someone there isn't people anymore, it's the managers of my office. And their action isn't trying to take the stairs, it's opening up the stairwell so that people aren't forced to take the lift. So I'll give you a few more sentences to turn into at least 2 different should statements. It's very dangerous to cycle on fast roads. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Okay, great. And your next sentence, Shaw is a better batsman than Gill. So these are both new cricketers on the Indian national team. Shaw is a better batsman than Gill. Okay. So I had a couple of ideas there, something like cricket fans should support Shaw over Gill, or the Indian cricket team should give Shaw more opportunities to play than Gill. Okay, your next sentence. It's really hard to prevent bullying on social media. Okay, great. So I think we're getting really good at turning ideas and thoughts into productive should statements. And you'll be looking at a long list of should statements on your notepad or wherever you're writing this down. So we're going to move on to actually writing our opinion piece. So you're going to choose one of those should statements from your list. So pick something that you really care about or you strongly agree with. I think I'm going to pick my office managers should open up the stairwell so we can use the stairs instead of the lift. Okay, and once you've picked that, I'm going to give you some time to think about the end goal for that should statement. So if it actually happened, if the people you mention in the should statement actually did that action, how would the world be different? And so here you've got to think about the ultimate goal. So don't just think about the immediate consequence. Think about how would the world substantially be different as a result of that consequence? What chain of events is it going to lead up to? So for me, the immediate consequence will be people in my office will start taking the stairs instead of the lift. But the ultimate goal is all of these office workers who are normally really stressed get a little bit more exercise in their day. So they're going to live slightly healthier lives mentally and physically. It could encourage them to get more activity into their day and become even healthier. They can get their blood pumping so that by the time they actually reach the office, they're happy and cheery, and they haven't been in a really enclosed, tight space. So lots of positive, emotional, physical, mental benefits in this ultimate goal, in this like ideal world that I'm drawing up. So think about your ultimate goal. How will the world ultimately be different because of this should statement? And you're just going to take a few minutes to write that out. So you're going to describe it. Just write down, don't take your pen off the page, just write down everything that comes into your mind when you picture that end world. If you can't put it into complete sentences, that's fine. Just use whatever words come into your head. It should just be like a stream of consciousness. So I'll give you about 3 minutes to get started. Okay, so hopefully you've got quite a bit written down. If you've still got more. Okay, great. Well, you've actually just written about half of your article in those 3 minutes. That's really how quick it can be. I'm just going to talk a bit about arguments and critical writing, so you can put your pen down, give your hand a bit of a rest. Critical thinking, critical reading and writing is really a whole academic discipline. There are entire university courses on it. I did philosophy at uni, and we spent a lot of that time looking at the theory of arguments and how to write, how you structure essays or arguments, syntax. But we'll just focus on the bare bones today. So arguments, any argument has at least 3 parts. There's the conclusion. For us, that's our should statement. So you can put it at the end of your article as the conclusion, but you should also put it at the beginning so that everyone knows why you're writing this, why they should do what you're telling them to do. And then there are 2 parts that give some more information. And in uni speak, we call these premises, but essentially they're just bits of information that are relevant to the conclusion. They tell us why you have that conclusion, why people should do that should statement. So what you've written about the end goal, that description tells us what we're aiming for, why we want to achieve that ultimate world, what's good or right about that end goal. So that's going to be one of those 2 paragraphs. Actually, it's going to be the last one. It's going to go at the bottom. But what's missing here is the link between the action in your should statement and that ultimate world that you've described. So why should we do what you're telling us to do in the should statement in order to achieve that end goal? Why that should statement that you're arguing for leads to that ultimate goal that you've described. So to explain that link, we need some evidence. We need to do some research, and that evidence can be facts, statistics, anecdotes, surveys, scientific facts, historical facts. And it sounds kind of straightforward, but actually the really tricky part here is deciding what evidence supports your argument, what evidence is most important or most relevant. So that's what we're going to work on now, to practice identifying the most important or relevant evidence. We'll come back to your article in a few minutes, so you can put that to one side for now. And I'm going to give you a few new arguments, and there'll be a few different bits of information or evidence for each one. And let's try to work out which piece of evidence is the most relevant for that argument. So these three arguments, I'm going to give you the should statement and a little bit about that ultimate end goal. So the first is about nurses and the NHS. And the should statement is, the government should reinstate bursaries for nursing students so the NHS can recruit more nurses and provide better care for patients. So the ultimate end goal there is that the NHS can recruit more nurses and provide better and quicker care for patients. And here are the three bits of evidence. First, the NHS employs 320,000 nurses and 150,000 doctors. 2, I know a nurse and he isn't a nice person. And 3, the NHS could be understaffed by 70,000 nurses within 5 years because the government has scrapped bursaries for nursing students, according to a report by the government. So have a think and pick one of those three bits of evidence. Okay, great. So these are three really different bits of information. 1 and 3 are more statistical. We've got some numbers in there. Number 2 is anecdotal evidence. So it's about one person's experience with one nurse. And in this case, that kind of anecdotal evidence is just not very relevant to our should statement or our ultimate end goal. It doesn't tell us anything about how the NHS can provide better and quicker care to patients, or why there's a shortage of NHS nurses. Number 1 gives us a bit more information about how many nurses work for the NHS. It doesn't really tell us how many we need and how that affects patient care. So again, it's a little bit more useful, but not quite strong enough to make that a convincing argument. Number 3, I think, is the most useful, because what you've got here is a description, an extract from a government report that's criticising itself. So already you think they're much less likely to be biased if they're criticising, if the government is criticising itself, rather than if another body or group is criticising the government, or the government is criticising something separate from itself, another body or group. And this piece of evidence, number 3, also tells us that there's a link between scrapping bursaries for nursing students and the NHS nurse shortage. So that's really relevant. So I would pick 3. as the most important evidence for supporting this argument. So the second argument we'll look at: supermarkets should use paper instead of plastic packaging to help prevent global warming. So our should statement there is supermarkets should use paper, and the ultimate end goal is preventing global warming. So the 3 bits of evidence. Plastic is made from fossil fuels which create greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases cause global warming. Number 2, paper packaging was used for hundreds of years before plastic was invented. And number 3, paper bags are easier to rip if your child gets their head stuck inside and can't breathe. I don't know why I find that so funny. So have a think about which bit of evidence is most relevant to the argument. Okay, so again, 3 bits of information, all very different. So the first one is scientific fact. The second one is historical fact. Number 3 is, I guess, scientific, maybe anecdotal evidence. But anyway, it doesn't seem very relevant to preventing global warming, so I wouldn't use that as evidence or something to support this argument. Again, number 2 also doesn't give us any information relevant to preventing global warming, which is what we're aiming towards. So it doesn't really solidify that link between supermarkets using paper packaging and preventing global warming. Number 1, however, does create that link. So it just sort of spells it out. So plastic comes from fossil fuels, which creates greenhouse gases, which create global warming. So if you stop using plastic, you create less greenhouse gas. That means that you'll probably cause less global warming. Okay, and our third argument is about driving. So the government should ban men under 21 from driving, so roads are safer for everyone. So our should statement there is that the government should ban men under 21 from driving, and our ultimate ideal world is that roads are safer for everyone. So 3 bits of information here again. Male drivers aged 17 to 21 are 4 times more likely to have a road accident than drivers aged over 70. Number 2, age is a pretty poor indicator of driving ability, said Caroline Abrahams, the director of the charity Age UK. And number 3, female students get better grades than male students. 5% more women than men get firsts or 2 1s at university. So again, have a think about which of these 3, so which one is the most relevant. Okay, great. So again, this one, I found this quite tricky actually, because there are 3 bits of information there and all 3 of them are actually quite convincing. Also, I don't really agree with the should statement, but I'm going to put my opinion to one side. But yeah, these 3 bits of evidence, 2 of them are statistical, and number 2 is, I guess, the opinion of someone in a authoritative position. So she's the director of a charity, Age UK, that aims to reduce the sort of the difficulties and sort of social barriers, I guess, of people of different age groups, particularly, I think, the elderly, I think. The trouble with that piece of evidence is that all we have to go on is her position. She doesn't tell us why she thinks that, and so we just have to assume. So we could assume that her working in this sector means that she has some experience or expertise in different age groups and their skills, their driving skills or other skills. But on the other hand, the fact that she works for a charity in this sector might mean that she is hyper vigilant about people being treated differently based on their age, or she's strongly opposed to that, and that's why she's saying this. So again, we've got to make a lot of assumptions here, so it doesn't seem like very strong evidence. Number 3, again, I think there are some gaps here, some leaps of some assumptions that we need to make. So this one is tricky. So it's saying that young men don't perform as well academically as young women. And so to be charitable about how that's relevant to the argument we're debating, I suppose you could say that that means that young men aren't as smart as young women. And that might mean that they're less suitable to drive. But again, there's a lot of leaps there between academic performance and intelligence, and then from intelligence to driving ability and how safely you drive, or how you behave on the road. So again, I'm not sure about that bit of evidence. But then number 1, again, so this is difficult too. These statistics are comparing older drivers over the age of 70, with young male drivers, and it's saying that comparing these two groups, male drivers are not as safe because they seem to be involved in more road accidents than people over the age of 70. But again, there's a lot of questions that you can ask here, because it's not really clear how whether that means that young men are such unsafe drivers that we should allow none of them to be driving. It's also only comparing 2 age groups and missing out everyone aged between 21 and 70. So I suppose between these 3, I would probably pick number 1, but really I wouldn't want to use any of them in this argument, because I don't think any of them are strong enough. You definitely need some more information for each of them. So if you disagree, or if you have any other thoughts, please add them to the comments, get the conversation going. Let's see if you can change my mind or give me some more relevant evidence to back up one of these arguments. But that exercise was really to get us thinking about what's the most relevant information or evidence. And especially in this world, there is so much information out there. The web, the internet is so big, and then there are millions of books, journal articles, social media, all throwing different bits of information at us. And we really have to try and think critically about what is actually relevant to different arguments. So a lot of these things can seem like important or even convincing bits of information, but they don't always connect our should statement to our ultimate goal. So we are now going to get writing using all those skills that we've been working on over the past hour. So let's go back to the opinion that you chose earlier. So when I asked you to choose a should statement, and then you've written out your end goal, if that should statement actually happened. And you're going to take a new page, and at the top you're going to write out your should statement. So that's right at the top, and that's going to be your introduction. It can also be your title. Actually, those are really really powerful titles that say why my office managers should open up the stairwells, or why, whatever your should statement is. It really encourages people to read on. So yeah, we're just writing that at the top of our page. And then the third paragraph, I'll just tell you what that's going to look like, what you're going to do with that. You're going to copy out your description of the end goal, the ultimate sort of ideal world, how the world will be different if that should statement actually happens. So for me, I've got a lot of adjectives and incomplete sentences, things like happy, healthy, productive, blood pumping, exercise. So I'm going to turn all of those into complete sentences and sort of paint a word picture about that world to make it really convincing for the reader as to why we should be doing this should statement. And then in the middle, so your second paragraph, that's when you're going to go out and do your research. So this can be the internet, Google. You can talk to family and friends. Maybe anecdotal evidence is important for your argument. You can look at books or social media or journals, news articles, whatever you want, but you're going to collect lots of bits of information and pick out the most relevant information for your argument. So the most relevant information that's going to connect that should statement to your ideal ultimate world. And that's going to be your second paragraph. So you're going to go away and work on that in your own time. And I'm about to wrap up and leave you to work on that. But we would really love to see what you've got. So it really doesn't need to be long. Actually, the most persuasive arguments are really short. So you can post them in the comment section below, or post them on our Facebook page or our Instagram at Tattva, or you can even email them to us. So that's hello@tattva.org.uk. So any comments, questions, anything, and especially your writing, we'd love to see that. So send that in, and I will leave you there.